Hello everyone, you're welcome to this special edition of The Inside on Équinoxe Television. We're broadcasting from Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. In this edition of the program, we'll talk about the COVID-19, or in other words, coronavirus. We'll talk about the management of the COVID-19 pandemic in Cameroon, and our first guest in this edition of the program is a medical expert, Professor Eugene Sopngui. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You are a professor of endocrinology and metabolism at the University of Yaoundé, one and consultant endocrinologist at the Yaoundé Central Hospital. You are a full fellow of the African Academy of Science. You worked in Paris, France, notably at the Paris 7 Medical School and St. Louis University Hospital, France, and at the University of Newcastle, and in the United Kingdom as senior lecturer of epidemiology.
Exact. That's
all right. Just next to you, we have Professor Elvis Ngolengole, a political scientist, Associate Professor of Political Science at the Institute of International Relations of Cameroon, and a lecturer at the Catholic University. You lectured at the Catholic University of Central Africa, and you were equally lecturer in the United States of America. Professor, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Jonathan.
And
it's a pleasure being with our co-panelist, Professor Sobgui, and my good friend, Senator Kemende.
All right, to my extreme left, Senator Kemende, or Barrister Kemende Henry, member of the Cameroon Upper House of Parliament, barrister at law, former member of the Cameroon Bar Council, and a representative of the Cameroon Bar Council president in the Northwest region of Cameroon. You welcome, Barrister.
Thank you, Mr. Babila Jonathan. The pleasure is always mine to be at Equinoxe.
All right, you're welcome. Doctor, I'm going to start with you. And I want us to start from floor level. What is it? Coronavirus. The coronavirus, what is it?
Coronavirus is a virus that has, I would say, always existed, but there are several variants, and we are experiencing, the world is facing an epidemic due to a new variant of the coronavirus. It's actually, that's the reason why it is called the new coronavirus 19, and the disease related to it is called COVID-19. So it is a virus that can cause a flu-like disease, but very severe, more severe, with a very high potential to spread all over the world, and also very high mortality across the world, as you know.
Right. I want us to get it very correct. Is it a new thing, or it existed before?
It is a variant of something that existed before, which means, as you know, pathogens may change over time. And this is a pathogen that has changed from its original nature. Just like, for example, for malaria, you can have a resistance to malarial drug just due to the fact that parasites are adapting to the treatments we have, so there might be a change in a pathogen. In this specific case, it's a new coronavirus. So it's from the coronavirus family, but it's just like a new offspring of that family that has occurred. About where it comes from, since when it existed, it is not possible to be precise. The world is learning and learning day after day about this disease, knowing that the first case was reported on the 29th of December 2019. So we just 12 weeks apart from the discovery of this disease, and research is ongoing.
Right. The name COVID-19.
Yes.
Can we have some explanation
It's
on that?
coronavirus associated disease of 2019. So it's the disease related to the new coronavirus of 2019. So that's why WHO decided that it will be called COVID-19. That's the name of the disease.
It started in Wuhan, the commercial center of the People's Republic of China, and it has been spreading very fast. What explains this fast move of the virus across the world?
Several things. It started in the most populated country in the world. That's a risk factor for the spread of a disease. It's not really an airborne disease, but it's transmitted through the secretion of the upper respiratory tract, and unfortunately droplets, when they fall on a surface, the virus can survive for several hours, which means it's not just like an airborne disease where from breathing you can get it. Is also due to the particles that can be on surfaces that can be spread by droplets coming from a person who will cough. So, which means due to the mode of spread, it's a disease that will easily spread across the world, because you cannot live without breathing, and you cannot, those who have the disease, they will cough, and they will have the droplets, and you can touch it, and if you don't wash your hands frequently, if you don't care about hygiene.
We're going to talk more about the preventive measures in a short while.
Yeah.
Thousands.
The other reason why it spreads fast across the world is because of travel. Lots of travel within China and between China and the rest of the world. For example, we're not surprised to have the disease in Cameroon just due to the number of Cameroonians traveling abroad and people from abroad traveling to our country. And now the disease is affecting more than 140 countries because of
the first case
travels.
in Cameroon came from France, and thousands of deaths have already been recorded around the world, in Italy, in China, and in other parts of the world. Thousands of confirmed cases have already been recorded in the Republic of Cameroon. As of now, we have 27 cases that have been confirmed by the Minister of Public Health, Dr. Manauda Malachi. Now, in Cameroon, the government has put in place a series of measures, 13 measures to fight against the coronavirus, to prevent its spread. I begin with you, Professor Elvis Golengole. When you look at these measures that have been put in place by the government, are they good enough to prevent the spread of the virus? Since the measures have been in place, the numbers have been increasing.
Yes, I'm satisfied with the fact that the government has taken very strict measures. But it suffices to say that the government of Cameroon is doing what all governments have done and are still doing, because this virus, it's a public health danger, and at any moment that a society, particularly a political society or in political terms, faces a public danger, meaning a danger to the health of the citizens, the first actor that is supposed to act or react is always the government, and that's why governments all over the world, including our government, have taken very strict measures to make sure that they reduce or prevent and ensure that their citizens are protected. So I'm quite satisfied. I'm sure that we will see more, because the experts have told us how dangerous it is. You've just heard from Professor Sobui. I'm sure that we have not seen the end of it, but we are happy that our government has taken the measures it has taken.
The land, sea, and air borders of Cameroon have been shut down, except for cargo planes that are coming in with some essential material. And the President of the Republic also authorized trade transactions between Cameroon and the other countries of the sub-region. Schools have been shut down. Beer parlors, restaurants, and other places of entertainment are now compelled to close as from 6 p.m. And the Minister of Trade Luke Magratangana has also taken some measures compelling markets to close down by 4 p.m. and a series of other measures that have been taken. But you said that government has taken strict measures. The government of China took strict measures, and the cases have reduced, and China has practically contained the virus, and people are leaving the hospitals back to their homes. But in Cameroon, the cases are still increasing, and you say you're satisfied?
Yeah, I mean, you see, the reactions or the measures taken by governments are not the same. We have about 193 governments or more in the world, and each government, and you've just said yourself that about 140 countries have been affected already. Also, different governments take measures, so the measures vary. But I think the measures are not measures that are static. The measures obviously will change as the circumstances also change. The measures taken by one government are not necessarily the same as another government. I think that in the case of Africa, there are about, 29 or 30 countries that are affected. And these countries have their governments, and each government has taken the sort of measures as it sees the situation. I think in the case of Cameroon, we couldn't compare the danger or the situation in China to that of Cameroon, because in China it is really serious. It has been serious. In fact, it started there, and they took, and I can't blame them. I mean, it's the hardest hit country in the world. I think Italy has just surpassed China in terms of the number of deaths, but still in terms of the numbers affected, China still
400 cases
China
on
still
a single
has
day.
a higher number. Yeah. So these measures vary, but what is satisfying as a citizen that I am is that our government too has taken strict measures, and obviously we have not seen the end of it. We probably will see more measures because
Senator Kemende,
the government cares about the health of the citizens.
Senator Kemende, what's your take on all the measures that government has taken so far? Government's management of the COVID-19 pandemic.
In fact, Mr. Babila, if you ask me, I would say I'm not always into praising ourselves for having done enough. I always like to throw the challenge to keep posing challenges, because that is what a government should be interested in having. Not praise singers, not who praise them for the least effort they put in, but those who challenge them to put in more effort. And this is one of those circumstances that is faced. That
somebody, however, said that it's good to tell a child that what you did was good. You know, some kind of encourage the child to.
Yes, in as much as you say it's good, you have to compare with what other children do at other homes and see whether we have done where the performance of our child is really above or below average. We must not shy away from that. And any government that wants to be forward-looking should be ready to receive challenges. I want to think that we have carried so far. We have taken contradictory measures. Let me just cite for one example. They have shut down schools. Schools from nursery schools right to the university, like professional schools. That's a very serious measure that has been taken by the government in order to avoid students being in one environment. Whether day school or dormitory schools, they have all been shut down, meaning that the thing is considered by the government to be serious. But then at the same time, and the Prime Minister came out with the Prime Minister's instructions, having received strict instructions from the head of state to convene an interministerial meeting, whereby these resolutions were taken and endorsed by the head of state. To have given those instructions, and then subsequently yesterday we were at the opening of the session of the Senate parliamentary session, and there the same head of state was quoted to have been consulted before the current session of the parliament was convened. So how could it be that the same head of state, who is the father of the nation, who is the person who oversees that things are done with that, the security, internal and external security of the country, and when we talk about security, we don't talk about security in terms of war and all. We talk about security in terms of medical challenges as we're having now. But to imagine that the head of state, in his role, instructed the Prime Minister to come out with the instructions to hold an interministerial meeting with the relevant ministries and come out with the measures that the Prime Minister outlined, without any exception, and limiting the holding of meetings to less than 50 persons. And where 50 persons should hold a meeting, it is prohibited. And then that meeting, there were no exceptions, Mr. Babila. There were no exceptions in that Prime Minister's instructions about the holding of Parliament. Parliament is a meeting of members of Parliament of more than the 2 houses, no house sits with less than 50%. So how then did the parliament come out with an exception for itself, such as to convene, and that was done yesterday, under the instructions of the same head of state, whose instructions were to the effect that not more than 50% should gather in a hall for any meeting. And we were there more than 50.
And you people respected that instruction to meet in parliament in violation of the instruction of the Prime Minister, who said that people should not meet at a given place at a given time, more than 50.
What is most intriguing, Mr. Babila?
There was nobody to tell the head of state this thing is not correct.
The thing is that this was just an opening ceremony. I think in the days I will look into that. But what is intriguing is the fact that the Prime Minister himself, who gave those instructions, and they were flouted by the Parliament, was present in the 2 houses, at the National Assembly and at the Senate. That was the most embarrassing situation. So I asked myself, where then is the place of the instructions of the head of state that you pass that on to the population, and you are attending a meeting of more than 50%? Without any measure, they will tell you that they put in place certain measures to check the transmission. What about somebody who is already infected and who should have been what part of that assembly? It doesn't mean that you can control him when he sneezes. If he sneezes by error and sneezes into the air, doctor here will tell you that would be dangerous for labor.
You're raising a problem of the application of the instructions, the measures taken by government, and the present House Speaker.
That are contradictory even.
The present House Speaker, Kavaege Jibril, came into the country.
That was one of the most blatant violations.
And he did not respect the instruction of the Minister of Public Health, who said that everybody should go through a quarantine of 14 days.
I'm a lawmaker. I will tell you that's one of the blatant, one of the most disgraceful and open violation of a let-down instruction. Let me tell you what, that was anti-constitutional. And even the convening of this parliament is anti-constitutional. Let me say, the head of state is the person who oversees the security of the nation. And having given instructions that take into consideration of the security of the entire Cameroonian population, and it is violated by another supposed power. Who does the lawmaking? The constitution emanates from the lawmaking house. And even the powers that are given the head of state and his members of government emanate from the constitution. And for the lawmaker to have been seen violating the constitution and the laws that are put in place was actually outrageous.
Professor, I'll come back to you in a short while. Professor, you are a political scientist, and you have a mastery of how Parliament functions,
the workings of state institutions,
how state institutions functions. What explains the fact that somebody who is expected to show the example is violating instructions of the Prime Minister, and by extension the head of state, because the Prime Minister took those instructions with higher instructions from the head of state?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, when this comes from a barrister and at the same time a lawmaker, because Barrister Kemende is both a barrister and a lawmaker, but this is what we hear from him, then I begin to wonder. We shouldn't forget 2 points I'll make from what he has said as follows. One, Parliament meeting is a matter of law. I'm sure he knows this. That the Parliament has to meet at a certain time as a matter of law. I'm saying this. Second, I would like to say that I'm sure he is a lawyer. He knows that, yes, that is the law. But yes, there have been instructions in terms of the measures that have just been taken. But the fact that the President of the National Assembly or the fact that the Parliament and the Senate met yesterday could be exceptions which we do not know all the contours. Maybe he knows more because he's a lawmaker. But I do not think that you'd come and say responsible senators and parliamentarians, I mean House of Assembly members, who are men and women who are responsible, would, and in the presence of the government of the Republic, would violate the law, because they are supposed to be...
Were measures taken to ensure that the presence of the House Speaker in Parliament and the holding of the plenary session do not contribute in spreading the COVID-19?
Obviously, I'm sure that as responsible men and women who were present, they've taken certain exceptional measures to ensure that the public danger is not compromised. I would be surprised that someone would see 100 senators and 167 parliamentarians, and in the presence of a government, at the head of which is the Prime Minister, violating the laws of the Republic and instructions that were pronounced, first of all, by the Prime Minister himself. I think that we should all look at it this way. We should look at it that, look, this danger is a public danger to everybody. And all of us, as citizens, patriotic citizens who care about the collective health of Cameroonians, we understand that we must be careful, and that the best thing we can do is to adhere and respect the measures that have been taken. But we are not naive to ignore the fact that there could be some exceptions somewhere. We don't know. We cannot know everything. But I would be surprised to say that someone is irresponsible simply because he showed up in Parliament.
Senator Kemende says that no measures were taken.
I don't know.
Doctor or Professor Samgui, how does the COVID-19 spread?
I would like to react on part of what has been discussed before in terms of measures taken. It is important to place things in their context. The world is facing a massive epidemic, and an epidemic is a dynamic process. In this dynamic process, there's like a toolkit of measures that can be taken at different stages of the spread of the disease. What is usually called phase 1 is, or before phase 1, you have, as a country, we need to take measures that will prevent the virus from entering into the country, or that will at least delay the entry of the virus into the country.
And that
was phase 1.
The borders have been shut down.
Yeah. And phase 2, when you're in phase 2, it's already when the virus is there, it's already spreading across within the country, and the measures are meant to continue to reduce the importation of new cases, but also to reduce the spread within the country. That's why at phase 2, the most important thing is what we call barrier measures, avoiding people to be in contact with the virus. And the whole set of measures you've heard about are mostly targeting the reduction of importation of the virus, of new cases, and the reduction of the spread of the virus within the country. In terms of is it enough or not, the question is actually, should we go to phase 3 or phase 3 measures, or remain to phase 2 measures? And this is really a matter of, I would say, different approaches of public health issues. Each of us, we will have, I mean, if you take public health specialists, they will have different views of this. I have my personal views of this. We can discuss it later. But what is important, and I think I should emphasize on this, what is important is an enforcement of the measures taken. And it's clear, it's true that all citizens should make sure they try as much as they can to their best to comply with these measures. Because it's not only a matter of self-protection, it's mostly a matter of protecting our fellow countrymen, of everybody. So in terms of...
so are these measures, as an expert in the field, the measures that have been taken so far, yielding the fruits, yielding the expected fruits, that of containing the virus?
When you implement something, you have to measure the impact. And the time scale, time frame to measure the impact is not enough to say whether or not it is actually working as expected. Because there's another issue. Are all the cases diagnosed? Like all other diseases, like all other countries, you can, I mean, the hypothesis that all cases, existing cases, are not diagnosed is probably true. But it's a reflection of the magnitude of the epidemic in our country. So it's a good indicator for the selection of measures within the toolkits of measures, existing measures.
All right,
So
before you go further to talk about how the COVID-19 spread, I would like you to react on something that a medical expert, like you said, Dr. Roger Etoile, he said that if total confinement is not implemented immediately in the weeks ahead, there are going to be 100 and more cases in Cameroon. What do you think about this?
total confinement is, in public health terms, in epidemic situations, is a good measure, provided it is implemented the right way. And I need to raise few concerns in order to reach my point concerning total confinement. First of all, why would you impose total confinement to a person in Garoua while the virus is not there? So you might hamper economic development in that area for almost no clear reason. So we need to know where is the threat, where the threat is, so as to contain the threat. For now, the risk for Cameroon is 1, importation of cases. And for that, we need to close the borders. 2, in Cameroon, the risk is the spread of viruses from existing cases, and those cases for now have been identified in Douala, in Yaoundé, and in Bafoussam.
And they've been quarantined, even though they are at risk.
Yes, let me go to the end of what I want
Go
to
ahead,
say.
please.
Yes, so therefore, in terms of confinement, my personal view would be a sort of confinement of the sources, potential sources of the spread of the virus. Therefore, Yaoundé, Douala, and Bafoussam, those are the targets of a total confinement measure. And in terms of total confinement, we need also to think about the lifestyle. Total confinement, it worked in China, in Wuhan, and they also did for the whole country for 10 days. It is currently being implemented in the most affected countries, and no evaluation is available yet. But we should bear in mind that the average size of a family in those countries is much lower than the average size of a family here. Therefore, we need to thoroughly think about it. If I confine in a single place 6 children with their grandma, and the children, they have the virus, and I know that the grandma is more vulnerable, am I doing good or doing bad? I'm not saying that it means we should not confine. I'm just throwing the ideas that should be taken into consideration when considering such type of measures.
So for now, in a nutshell, for now, total confinement.
If we go towards total confinement might be very good if it is implemented, but only in those places where the virus is. Why doing total confinement in Cholire or in Bertoua or in Bisongabang if the virus is not there? We should target total confinement of areas where the virus is. The Chinese started total confinement of Wuhan. We should not just get the word total confinement and try to throw it like this. So my advice to the lawmakers, to the government would be, let's cut completely Yaoundé, Douala, Bafoussam from the rest of the country. They should not send the virus in the rest of the country. It will give the opportunity to invest all the means of the epidemic response in those affected areas.
All right, Doctor, I'll come back to you in a short while so we can talk about how the virus spreads further. But Professor Elvis Golengole, you're a former member of government.
Yes.
if you were to advise the government today on this issue of total confinement, what will you say?
Yeah, well, I'm not an expert, a medical expert, but I agree with what the medical expert has said. But to add to what he has said, as someone who is in the science of studying the functioning, the organization of state institutions and state policies, because that's what political science is all about. See, generally speaking, the best actor in a situation where there is a public hazard, a public danger, meaning a danger to the public, the most important and the best actor is the government or the state. And that is why you've noticed all over the world, states have taken the upfront, and I'm very glad that our government and the state of Cameroon has taken that role to make sure that through policies of taking certain measures that they've taken based on what the experts have told them, obviously we hope that we will be able to prevent and at the same time reduce the spread. But the issue of the particular issue of using a policy method that is called total confinement, generally speaking, the way state institutions function, it is that political systems that are closed can use certain methods easily, much easily, such as total confinement, while political systems that are open, such as ours and most of the Western world, it becomes very difficult to do total confinement, because total confinement does not work well where people are used to a free lifestyle, freedom to express, freedom to move. When you do that, you are changing people's lifestyle, and you might run into other problems which you didn't anticipate. So,
right, so
you
according
have to
to
be
you,
tactful.
it will not be applicable in the context of Cameroon.
It can be applicable, but it will be hard in an open society. That is why, if you notice, look at the world. In most countries in the world that are open political systems, total confinement is difficult.
Senator Kemende, you seem not to be satisfied with all the measures that government has taken this far. You were highlighting contradictions and so on. And there are other persons like you, CPP, for example, the Cameroon People's Party with Kabanwala Edit, who think that government should take stronger measures or higher measures that will prevent the numbers from increasing as far as the confirmed cases of the COVID-19 is concerned. What do you think about total confinement, total lockdown?
Mr. Babila Jonathan, about this COVID-19, we'll call it coronavirus, or maybe call it Chinese virus, as Trump want to call it. In fact, it is a very serious health issue. It's a very serious issue that puts at peril the life of a nation. And that's why the high instructions came from the head of state. It puts into peril the life of the entire nation. There's no sacrifice that can be much more than life. You see, when you talk about total confinement, I asked myself the question, I will just immediately ask the question. If we cannot succeed to confine the President of the National Assembly alone, we cannot confine him alone, are we going to confine the rest of Cameroonians in their houses? We may order total confinement. And along the line, some other people, for some other reasons, may define exceptions to it that are not provided by that decree or that order, confining people completely. The problem we have...
But that is the attitude that public authorities are condemning, because there are some of the Cameroonians who came in from France and were quarantined in some hotels in Douala, and they have been threatening to escape.
And I heard even some of them were not admitted in the hotel because the logistics were never put in place. The other inmates of that hotel, they were never informed. So they were not prepared, they were not free.
But in times of crisis, should we be looking for luxury and comfort?
The thing is that they ought to have at least made proper arrangements with the hotels that were supposed to, where those suspected cases were supposed to be confined. But it seems, no, it was enough for the government to announce that they were going to be taken to a hotel, but just for the public view. But then nothing was effectively done to put in place all what it entailed. They never even, it shows that from the disagreement that came up between the hotel management and the government, represented by the governor, that the governor had to even go to the location, is that there were no proper arrangement. It was like we're doing it to satisfy some people who are waiting to see how we handle this case. And honestly speaking, we must, by the time we take measures, we must see about its implementation. And Prof just said something, that the law, that the parliament is sitting as of law and on. It is under normal circumstances. Laws were made to be applied when everything is held constant, when everything is normal. But we are having a situation of a health crisis, which the lawmaker did not foresee at the time he was making the law. And then the lawmaker, the only situation the lawmaker foresaw was the powers he has given to the head of state to declare state of emergency when there is a crisis, like this one that is going on. A state of emergency could be declared. A state of siege could be declared. It is not only under war circumstances.
The South African president Cyril Ramaphosa declared a state of catastrophe.
Yes.
Do you expect Cameroon's head of state to declare a state of emergency?
If need arises. But the question is, it will be handed, the instructions will be handed down, just as all the laws that we'll be making, they are good on paper. But when it comes to implementation, we will impose some exceptions that were never provided by the lawmaker. If I'm asking a question, Mr. Babila, if a single individual, they could not successfully confine a single individual who enjoys immunity like me, but who is not immune to the disease. The fact that he came from that plane, and people who were passengers in that plane have been diagnosed to have the coronavirus. So how do we know that he himself, who was allowed to escape from being quarantined, was not a carrier of the virus? And how many persons do we, 14 days have not yet expired, how many persons do we know that he has contaminated? Because we saw him shaking hands with people like, so it means that he's coming to assume his office. Let me tell you what, Mr. Babila,
should, however,
what is affecting us? What is affecting us in this country? That people value what is theirs more than the general interest. This was an issue of general interest. If it means that the president should be quarantined, may it be so. Let him be quarantined.
His daughter came in some few days ago, and she was quarantined.
Supposed to be quarantined.
Yes,
there is no immunity to health issues.
But we should say
even the military who have all the armory.
We should indicate that the House Speaker Kavayege Jibril has not been confirmed with COVID-19. He's not a confirmed case of COVID-19.
Quarantining you, Mr. Babila Jonathan, doesn't mean that you are. No, quarantining you means, because they say that the virus has got a lifespan of maybe 14 days. 14 days. We didn't wish to exhibit the symptoms that it is in you. So how could we test, what testing kit was put in place to test him and immediately make sure that lifespan of that virus has been reduced in his own case? You see a situation where somebody puts in place his individual interest to come and assume the office of state more than the general interest that he's supposed to protect, because he's coming home.
Professor Sobri, let's talk about how you said earlier, if I understood you well, you seem to have indicated that it is not an airborne disease. It does not spread in the air.
We just avoid to use that word, that specific term, because of the mixed way of transmission of the disease. But I think we shouldn't focus much on that. We should focus on the fact that it easily spreads across a population.
And I was going to ask you, how does it spread? How can somebody contract coronavirus?
By close contact with a person who has the virus. And what does that mean? If you have been in a country where the spread of the virus is much, you are likely to have been in contact with the virus by a mean or another mean. So that's number one. Number two, if you have been with a person with the virus less than 1.5 meters apart for more than 15 minutes, you are considered to have been in close contact with the person. That means, for example, in a plane, if you have been sitting next to a person with the virus, you are considered to be a close contact to a person. If you live in the same household.
Yesterday in the Senate,
yes,
we were put 1 meter apart. We sat 1 meter apart.
1 meter apart.
When we were communing, when we came out, we were less than, we were communing, chatting to each other less than 1 meter. We didn't ensure that distance between us as it was maintained in the hall.
That's why one of the most important points at this time is to implement ourselves and to enforce social distancing. Social distancing will be the key of prevention of the spread of COVID-19 in our country. We are very used to closeliness, so we need to enforce, to implement social distancing. We should not shake hands. We should not be, I don't know how you call it, embrace people. Yes, we should avoid that.
No,
and people should be.
In a short while, you elaborate more on the preventive measures. Now, there are issues concerning, there are questions concerning the hands. You know, picking the virus on the table, or picking it on the stairway, and things like that. And then touching the mouth and so on. Can you explain that?
Exactly. If, for example, I hope none of us has the virus, but as we are speaking, if the droplets fall on this table and I touch the table, and then after I touch the mouth, I'm likely to take the virus, to pick it. That's why
somebody goes up the
campaign has insisted on hand wash. The population did not understand well why the campaign was insisting that much on hand washing. But it's because that's the easiest way to catch the disease, because of the droplets that carry the virus that will be on surfaces, on handrails, as you said. So hand wash is still the key. Avoiding touching the face is still a very important measure to, And social distancing. Social distance is key. We cannot afford to avoid social distance. And that's another reason why shutting down the frontiers, was important, because you know the attractivity of diaspora. When a brother or a friend comes from abroad, how would you avoid to embrace him? How would you avoid to take presents from him? How would you avoid the family to come and meet and sit with him and discuss with him? How will you avoid
him kissing the wife that he had left behind?
Exactly. And then we can even think of more.
There's a serious problem at that level, Doctor.
Yes.
Many of the relatives of the people who have come from abroad and they are quarantined are not able to understand this. One of them was in my office a few days ago, and he was really bitter that they have quarantined his sister.
And he cannot greet him.
And he cannot greet her.
Yes.
He does not have access to her, and so on.
This is where the media are very important, and this is why I was not taking part in the discussion about I would say little points on the implementation. I really wish to take this time to insist to our fellow citizens that they should implement social distancing. That will protect them and that will protect others. Those coming from abroad, if they are not criminal, they should really refrain from embracing people. They don't know. When you come from a country where the virus is spreading that much, when you come, you should keep a distance. Otherwise, are you really loving that much the people you are pretending to love and started kissing them while you don't know if you have the virus or not, while you are likely to have you are at high risk of having the virus.
And some of them are saying, but my sister is not infected, my brother is not sick, and so on.
That happened with HIV at the beginning of the HIV era.
Criminals and things like that.
It happened with the HIV at the beginning of the HIV era, and we should learn from the past. Many people got infected because they pretended, but this person cannot be infected. How would you know?
It is not written on the face.
It is not written on the face. And even if it was, he was in contact. Who was sitting beside him in the plane? Do we know? We don't know. So it is very important. The population should understand. Unless we enforce, we implement social distancing, we will not fight against COVID-19. And it's a severe health issue.
Yeah, and that seemed to be very difficult to implement, simply because people have been used to, coming close to each other and so on. And one of the measures taken by the government says that the bars, beer parlors, entertainment places, restaurants, and so on will shut down at 6 p.m. The markets, according to the instructions from the Minister of Trade, will shut down by 4 p.m. But the question is, what happens between 6 and 4 p.m., 6 a.m. and 4 p.m. for the markets? They are still crowded. There are still too many people streaming into the market, in the beer parlors, in the restaurants. What happens between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m.?
The virus follows the
Professor.
This is what I would say, Mr. Babila, about this issue, which is really an issue of that is meant for medical experts to talk about. But because we are talking as citizens in the public interest, we understand that it's a public danger. It's a public interest issue. But in dealing with it, you have to deal with it from the standpoint of several fronts or several approaches. But all of us, no matter what approach we are coming from, all of us have to understand that as a society, as a nation, as a country, we must understand that the government has taken, and governments always, in the face of such public dangers, take the front line. And in our case, the government has taken the front line, has put out policies through the measures that it has taken. We must sometimes look at ourselves and feel sorry for ourselves, and not feel sorry, but understand who we are. We are a society of people who generally, by virtue of our culture, live in a way that the social distance is short, is close. We are generally a warm people. We socialize easily, and so forth and so on. And politically speaking, we enjoy our freedom, we love our freedom, we all want to express.
And
so in implementing these measures, which we all must respect and adhere to, we also have to understand that it's something new for us. And it's something which we have to adapt to. And not that we are kicking against, but we have to adapt to it.
And we have to adapt as fast as
possible, given the severity of the danger. Given the severity of the danger. So we should not take pleasure in criticizing or negating. Rather, we should see that this is something new. It's a serious danger, as the experts have told us, and that we are happy that the number one actor, the government, through the state, the head of state, has put up measures we should adhere, respect, and do our best to adapt so that we can reduce the danger of spread and we can prevent it from coming into the country.
All right, Senator Kemende, considering the difficulty or the near impossibility of putting a police officer behind every Cameroonian, behind every person on the Cameroonian territory, should the markets be completely shut down? Should the beer parlors, the restaurants, the entertainment places be shut down completely?
In fact, Mr. Babila Jonathan, as Prof was explaining, it's like the idea of shutting down bars at 6 o'clock, shutting the markets at 4 o'clock. It's like by the time the market is open, or by the time the bars are open, it's like we instruct the virus not to infect, not to be hostile. And that it is only after 6 o'clock or after 4 o'clock, as the case may be, that the virus now become very, very agile or become active to infiltrate the human body. At all times, the rate of infection between 6 o'clock and 4 p.m. could be as much as it would have been between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. when the market normally closes, or some of the market, because I see markets now at within the night, selling and buying take place within the night. You see, so we should not, if there's any reason that we have to suspect that the spread can take place, let us better instruct. We can give a window period for people to do purchases, people to purchase their goods and stay home for the 14 days that this virus is supposed to manifest itself in the human body. And then we now examine those who must have portrayed themselves as carrying it, and then we quarantine them. And then we now live to not see how much It has spread, and then we take measures how to prevent the further spread, as Doctor has put it. In fact, from what Doctor is explaining here, I think he needs a special program on his own to be able to sensitize the public better, not within us, because we are talking now like politicians and people who only access it socially.
Even though looking at
but I'm learning a lot from him.
Looking at the purchasing power of Cameroonians, what you're saying is going to be pretty difficult for.
But we have lived it. We have lived it. Maybe it's because
there are many.
Mr.
Who, if you give them 2 days now to purchase foodstuffs and fill the house,
it's because of
they don't have even 10,000 to do that, and that's going to be pretty difficult.
Permit me say, Mr. Babila Jonathan, maybe it's because it had to do with the northwest and the southwest regions that we were allowed to go through that torture without anybody caring for us. We have been going through it for a very long time. Whereby what I mean is the government has not instituted it, but the government has sat and watched it taking place. What I mean is, Prof. What I mean is that we have suffered shutdowns, whereby the government, the population, the population was affected. The government was not a stranger to the fact that
irresponsible people carried out the lockdown.
What I mean is, we're talking about a matter of fact,
COVID-19.
not conjecture. Yeah. If Northwest and Southwest could have suffered lockdown for a week, and whether decreed by who, but the fact is that the lockdowns operated at certain places.
A secessionist group to carry out a lockdown.
Now that it is not. It is for necessity's sake.
Only the government can institute a lockdown.
Let me say that.
Not a secessionist group.
I'm using it.
Not a political party.
Prof, I'm using it. Prof. Listen to me very well. I'm using it as a factual situation that obtained. Not that I'm legitimizing the people who caused the lockdown. I'm saying that as a matter of fact, that situation obtained.
But it's wrong.
No,
it is a wrong situation.
I think, please, Prof,
listen to me very well. I'm not saying that it was right. Prof, I am saying that. Mr. Babila Jonathan, I'm saying that whether it was, I'm not talking about the people who instituted it, whether it was illegal or legal. I'm not addressing that issue. It was illegal.
So it can obtain
and it obtained when the people did not voluntarily do it. They were forced to do it by what the circumstances that he knows. What more of people doing it as a health measure to protect themselves and to be able to live, to enjoy the right of life, as guaranteed by Constitution. It has happened. Prof, just give me a minute while I'm intervening. It has happened in Congo. I hear it has been shut down without any single case having been discovered there. One more of us, we have had cases that are from 7 to 27, and we are having
a shutdown. So a shutdown can be implemented in Cameroon if need be.
Now, for us to observe and take further measures that could help Cameroonians.
In the meantime, Doctor, how should a woman who is going to the market to buy foodstuffs behave at this point in time? How should somebody who is going to a beer parlor to buy a bottle of beer or whatever behave? How should somebody who is going to a restaurant behave at this point in time while waiting for the shutdown, complete shutdown, if at all the need arises?
Permit me to re-emphasize one thing. We should be humble facing this public health threat, this crisis. It is something that has affected more potent countries than ours. It has affected countries with healthcare system that were much stronger than ours. And yet, they've seen so many deaths. Let's just see Italy. Few weeks, more than 3,000 deaths. Let's just see France, with one of the best healthcare systems in the world. They have more than 400 people who have died. We need to let me take you back to this, because it's only a 12-week story. And in our country, the first case was diagnosed on the 5th of March. We need to recall ourselves the fact to know that it is a very serious issue. We don't have the infrastructure that they have to care for the most severe cases if they were to occur. Therefore, we must be very serious about prevention as individuals and as collectivity, as society. Therefore, I would like to emphasize on our personal responsibility. That was a long introduction to the answer to your question. How we should behave. Am I obliged to go to a beer parlor when there is a so serious health issue?
Not at all.
Am I obliged to be waving around when there is a so serious issue? As an issue that has been so serious that the kids are now at home and can't go to school. Why should I be acting irresponsibly? We should tell our people that it is not a joke. It is not a joke. Why would Italy just watch 600 people dying within 24 hours? If it was a joke, it is not a joke. People should take it seriously. And whatever the measures that are taken, they should take measures for self-protection and to protect others. For that reason, I'm saying beer parlor. What for? Number one. The market now. She should go to the market. She should do as fast as possible, and she should wash her hands thoroughly, wash the foodstuff. She should take those simple measures that are advertised on all TV channels, on all radios. She should take those measures seriously. That would avoid the spread of the virus. That is very important. And if I may, let us also not increase mortality due to COVID-19 in people without the virus. What do I mean? Let us not do things that will take people to death even when they are not sick. That's why the issue about lockdown, shutdown, total confinement should be considered appropriately. It should target the places where the threat is. It should target the places where the threat is. If we do that, we will protect other regions. We will protect other citizens. Therefore, even without total confinement, we should stay at home.
Doctor, you're saying
Let's
something.
try to stay at home.
You're saying something which I think is very crucial. We shouldn't, send shock waves into people's hearts. We shouldn't create fear and panic and so on.
No, I'm not saying that we shouldn't create fear or panic. This is a serious situation. The way I'm talking about something that is very serious. And as a medical practitioner, having those patients in the hospital, having our healthcare staff fearing to get infected, having other users of the hospital, they don't know whether they should still come to the hospital. Seeing all this, I need to talk about it very seriously. It's not a matter of not shocking people. No. It's a matter of we should not prevent a lady to go to the hospital to give birth in Kaile and die because she has not been able to give birth in a proper hospital because of lockdown. We should really
nothing. The virus has not.
Yes, the virus has done nothing, but COVID-19 has killed her.
Yes,
indirectly. No, indirectly.
Indirectly.
If I cannot have transport to the hospital, then I can die because there is no transport. We should not forget that. It's not that I'm against confinement or lockdown. It's just that I wish us, we need to consider all the consequences. If a person with a serious emergency has no transport to go to the hospital, he might die, and then it will be COVID-19 without the virus. That's why I say we should not increase COVID-19 mortality in people without the virus. Yes.
Right.
So that's why.
Let me chip in on the issue of lockdown. We use these words. I mean, these are English words. I mean, at least we're speaking in English. For a government, for a state, in the face of a public danger or in the face of any danger to the state, to the citizens, to carry out a policy of total confinement or a sort of a lockdown or a state of emergency or whatever, the government, it's a serious measure. And the government takes into consideration in applying that sort of measure, takes into consideration, you know, the lifestyles of the people, the cultures of the people, and so forth and so on. And so, lockdown,
lifestyles can change.
it can. I'm not saying that it can change, but let us be careful how we use the word lockdown. And I wanted to point out, following what Barrister Kamenda had said, that the use of the word lockdown is only legitimate and legal when it is the state that applies it. Any other group or person that applies it is illegal and it is illegitimate.
Well,
that is why the government has not applied it. And
Don't misquote me.
I'm not saying you've said so. It's good for us to say, don't compare what we have heard and read.
No, it
that
has
some
happened.
people have done in the north and southwest, which is illegal. That is not a lockdown.
Please, let's
We are not here. We are not here to
let's not
The
move.
government has not done a lockdown.
Let's not move out of the way, please. We are talking about COVID-19.
The lockdown has existed.
We are talking about
That word is a
COVID-19.
misuse of the
What I
word.
mean is that
Can we calm down?
We
Can
are
we calm
using
down
the
now?
English language by using lockdown
Please,
with reference to
we are talking
Whether it was
about
legal or illegal, it has
COVID-19
happened.
and not
It has happened.
something else. Doctor, I come back to you. When you're talking about social distancing, there are informations circulating on 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters.
At least 1 meter, but ideally at least 1.5. At least 1 meter is already something that can really help. And we should avoid contacts to last for more than 15 minutes. That will clearly help. And I would like to talk about something else. This facial mask, or I don't know the precise
Exactly.
word.
I was
Yes,
going to ask
yeah,
you
the
who should
gloves.
put on a mask and what is the importance of that
The
mask.
mask is for those who have those having the disease, those who have been in contact with people with the disease, so for people at risk, those who are still in a quarantine period, or those who are caring for people, directly caring for people with COVID-19. Yes, which means either for people with the disease, for people in contact with those with the disease, and even for simple people coughing or sneezing. If you want to go public, the mask is for you. The mask is not for other people. If you are not sick, if you don't have COVID-19, if you are not a contact person, if you don't cough or sneeze, you don't need a mask.
And for how long can you use the same mask?
This is, I would call it, it's nitty-gritties of that specific thing. Ideally, the mask should be advised by a healthcare professional. And depending on the type of mask, depending on why you are putting the mask for, then it can be decided for how long you can use it. For example, for us healthcare professionals, we use different types of mask, and we can use it only for 3 to 4 hours and not more. After that, is no longer as effective as it has to be. But for normal people, using the mask as a barrier for them not to infect others, they can even use it for the whole day, because the point is a barrier to avoid the droplets getting out.
And there are all sorts of masks that have been seen now on the streets. Masks for carpenters, for bricklayers, for
the most important, I would say the most important is that the people discuss with their healthcare professional, and they will tell them this is appropriate, you need it or you don't need it.
So you should consult a health professional before using a mask. Now, the issue of washing of hands, how frequent should we wash our hands?
It is said every hour, but it is every hour or as frequently as needed. For example, after being here with you, since I have touched this table, I need to wash my hands.
Because you don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened here before. So I need to wash my hands after being here. If I can't wash my hands, I need to have a hand sanitizer. and I was very happy to see our senator with hand sanitizer.
Yes.
These are measures that can really help.
And doctor, if I may, we leave of Jonathan to ask also.
Yes.
Go ahead,
When you sneeze, if somebody sneezes in the open who has got the virus in him, how long does it take for the droplets or for the air containing those the virus to drop, to settle somewhere, or and for it to be hanging in the air?
No, it drops almost immediately. It does. There is controversy about whether it hangs in the air or not, but basically, to make things simple, we consider that it drops almost immediately.
How long can it last before dying?
Several hours, or in some research settings, even days. So we shouldn't even. We shouldn't even bother about how many hours. We should wash our hands.
Okay.
Because I don't know whether the person who was here before, it was 30 minutes before, 1 hour before, or 12 hours before. So I should just wash my hands.
All right. What are the other preventive measures apart from distancing, social distancing, and then washing?
Yes, social
hands?
distancing barrier for those who have it or are having in contact. Yes, they can use the mask. We should make sure we avoid to touch our face
regularly.
Yes, this will help not to take. I would say to swallow the virus if
Before
we have touched. Yes. So yes, so we need to wash our hands frequently and avoid touching the face. We need to. What else? I'm not sure. I'm sure I've forgotten something, but it's usually on your TV programs. All the 7 things that one person should do to avoid getting infected or to prevent infecting other people. Yes.
All right. And what about touching things? When you're going up the stairway, touching this.
If you can avoid, then fine. If you can avoid, then fine. But since you know you can't totally avoid to touch things that you don't know who touched it before, you need to wash your hands.
Yes.
You need to wash your hands. And I would strongly advise Equinoxe Television to have at the entrance either a basin to, wash,
hand sanitizer, everybody who comes in.
hand sanitizer. That would be a way for Equinoxe Television to fight against coronavirus in its environment. Those are things because social leaders should be involved, or they should get involved. They should involve themselves by making sure that if you are responsible of a public space, you need to make sure that there is an opportunity for people arriving there to wash their hands or to clean them with a hand sanitizer. You need to have all the messages about distance, appropriate distance between people. If you are in charge of, for example, of a church, and you need to continue holding meeting, you need to make sure that you avoid having 50 people in the same room. And if you were, because it's not only a matter of 50 people. There are very small churches around here.
Big ones.
Yes, if you have 50 people in a very small church, it's as dangerous as having 1,000 people in a cathedral. Therefore, they should not only be focusing on the number, they should focus on the distance. And now we are in the era of new technologies. They should think about broadcasting the services. They should think about live broadcasting on Facebook, on all these things. They should think about spreading meetings and having like small group meetings. Okay. If they were to have 2 church services, they can have 5 church services. Yes, so 40, as to accommodate
50 or even 30.
Exactly. This is the responsibility of I would say social leaders. We've seen some traditional leaders, some traditional rulers who have completely banned some ceremonies in their villages to make sure that people will not be in those gatherings. Because you will see people telling you, Yes, but this is the first birthday party of my son. I cannot, there's no way we cannot celebrate it.
This is the funeral of my grandmother.
Yes,
It's
there's
the funeral
no
of
way
my
we cannot,
grandfather.
yeah.
Have to be there.
Yes.
Make it great.
Have to
That's
make it
the
great.
way of life now.
Yeah.
We have to stop all those.
Yes, we have to stop all those.
There are also issues concerning greetings and hugging, kissing, and so on.
We avoid it. We really avoid it. The issue is, so, I mean,
These are common sense issues.
yes, it's just like, I mean, it's like a war.
Yes.
It's a war, and unfortunately, we can't see the enemy. We just know how the enemy behaves, but we can't see the enemy. It's a war.
Doctor, this may
Soon the enemy will
this,
be the
this
person
may
carrying
sound
the disease.
this may sound a little funny, but I think it's important. Husbands and wives,
Yes.
no more kissing, no more hugging, nothing.
If one of
boyfriend
them
and girlfriend
is
too.
a high-risk person, if one of them has traveled in the past 14 days in a high-risk country, the person is a high-risk person and should do auto-confinement.
And if they have not traveled,
Yes,
No, no,
And if
and if they are
If
not
they are not
traveled
traveled.
and they have been in contact with people, with such people, or with people with the disease, they should practice auto-confinement. Otherwise, how can they claim that they love-
I have to distance myself from you when I come from Yaoundé, because Yaoundé is a threatened zone also.
And doctor, there's something else concerning general belief in the African societies, and you often hear people in the street saying, but they usually say it in pidgin: "Black man or the die dirty." The black man
Yes, it's
has a very
completely,
strong
yeah.
system and is resistant to the COVID-19 or whatever and so on.
I think it's because those who died from the disease are not there to give testimonies. Let's not forget that our life expectancy is 30 years below. It's, I mean, it's much lower than the life expectancy of those countries. Yes. Which means if this was true, at least simple indicators like as life expectancy would have shown it. It doesn't show.
no, this is
Therefore, it is totally wrong. And
Mr. Babila,
yes,
if I could ask
Yes,
a
yes.
question, what about the fact that the disease grows mostly in the cold areas than in the hot areas like Africa?
There are questions on the
This-
impacts of the
That
climate.
you can drink hot water, you can.
I mean, the climate
yourself warm.
certainly plays a role in the spread of a disease, in a viral disease. That's the reason why for flu, it's a seasonal thing. So the climate plays a role. But do we actually have evidence that our climate prevents the spread
favorable.
of coronavirus? We rather have the evidence that it is not true, since we have cases, imported cases, and local transmission of COVID-19. Therefore, it means even in our environment, there is
It
local
survives.
transmission of COVID-19. End of story.
COVID-19 is in Cameroon, whether it's in Douala or not. It is in Cameroon, and all those in
It is
Douala,
in Douala.
all those in Garwa, all those in Marwa in the far north, all those in the northwest, southwest should respect the hygiene or sanitation measures put in place by the World Health Organization and the instructions of government in order to prevent the spread of the disease. Before I come to you, Senator, you are a representative of the people at the lower house of Parliament. Before I come to you for a word of advice in the upper house of Parliament, for a word of advice to the people. Doctor, there are two cases of the first two cases of the coronavirus that were recently released from quarantine and they've gone back to the families. Can you tell us what happened within the 14 days from the day they were put in quarantine right up to the day they were released?
They were not actually put in quarantine. They were hospitalized in isolation, in an isolation unit, because they had the disease. When it's the disease, you are admitted in an isolation unit in the hospital and you have very heavy health care, you receive very heavy care. I would like to, first of all, concerning those cases, say that it was a teamwork. It was a teamwork, both at the level of deciding what to do and at the level of implementing what we had decided. So we were coordinating a whole team that actually obtained that result by God's grace. Because let's be humble, people are dying in countries where they have much more means than we do, where they have more scientific information. They are likely to have more scientific information than we do. What happened? We actually had people who were watching scientific information on a daily basis so that we could adjust what we had to do. That was number one. Number two is that we were working as in a collegial way. We were meeting almost every day to consider all the parameters, all the existing knowledge to adjust the treatment. And for that we were the doctors of the hospital, but we also invited colleagues from the university, the Department of Internal Medicine at the Faculty of Medicine of Yaoundé 1 and the Department of Intensive Care. We all invited them and we had to discuss on what to do. And what was important is that we have staff there with doctors, 5 doctors, 5 nurses, and hygiene staff with, I would say, minute by minute monitoring and reporting of all the parameters. And we did all possible tests, including CT scanners of the lungs, so that we could see the lesions and see how it progressed. And in terms of treatment, we did what we call personalized treatment. We as individuals, we are unique, and you cannot treat me as you would treat yourself because we are different. It's just to quickly say that there are lots of protocols on WhatsApp and people would think, okay, it's easy, you just do what is written there and it's over.
Chloroquine.
Yes, our first 3 patients were all very different one from the other. Very different. You could not treat the 3 patients the same way. And this has to be clearly said. Medical field is about diagnosis and treatment. And a treatment has to be in parallel, in accordance with the diagnosis. There is the diagnosis of the disease, but there's a day-by-day diagnosis of the situation. And the treatment must be tailored to the situation. It must be tailored to the patient. And actually, one key of this success was the tailoring of the treatment to these patients. Yes, some of our patients received chloroquine, yes, but that was not all. It was really like 10% or even 5% of all what we had to do. Yes. Some of the patients are receiving 5 different types of medications at the same time because of their current status. You have patients in whom you give only one type of treatment. You have patients in whom you give no tablet, for example.
Depending on the symptoms that they are manifesting.
Yes. For example, in these 2, there's one where we required oxygen for days. Huge amount of oxygen. And you have to give oxygen when that oxygen is needed, and you have to be able to stop it exactly when it's no longer needed. Otherwise, you will cause damages. In these patients, I will not go into the details of what we gave. We only communicate on treatments in medical environments because we don't want people to go into self-intoxication. And I would really seize this opportunity to tell the listeners, the viewers, that it is very dangerous to have a weapon for something that you don't know. I mean, rushing to pharmacies and buy all what is written there on WhatsApp.
Drinking hot water, eating garlic, and so on.
It's for what use? So we need to have proper diagnosis. We need to have a day-by-day diagnosis of situation so that we tailor the treatment to the precise situation. Otherwise, we'll get the side effects of things. Nigeria is already reporting side effects of chloroquine in the population, while they only have 1 case of COVID-19 in the whole of Nigeria. So we should be very, very careful. There are things like non-steroidal and steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs that people take when they have flu. It actually worsens COVID-19 disease. So people should avoid taking medications on their own. They should be confident in the healthcare professionals that we are maybe more worried than they are, and we will take the necessary measures if they come to us with symptoms that are likely to be that disease, or if they come with the confirmed disease, we will take care of them. So they shouldn't worry and rush and buy auto-prescribed medications. They can harm themselves. They are likely to harm themselves.
So at the end of the day, the 2 cases were tested positive?
The 2 cases that were tested positive initially, they were tested negative. And not only that, we had to make sure that all the symptoms, they are symptoms free. We had to run all the other biological tests that were carried on initially to make sure that their systems were fine. And the specificity of Yaoundé patients is that we even did the CT scan of the lungs before and after. And we could have the evidence that the lesions in the lungs were also healed. So this is one of the specificity of the patients here that we are reporting, and that in this humble approach would like to be proud of. But while saying that, I must emphasize on the fact that we have hard days ahead. We should be prepared.
The director of the World Health Organization said Africa should prepare for the worst.
I don't buy the worst because we are fighting against the worst. I don't buy the worst, but because we are fighting against it. But we get what he is trying to tell us, that we should wake up. Yes, we should be very careful. Yes, it is a severe thing. We are fighting. As healthcare professionals, let me tell you, I tell my colleagues in the hospital, you should keep fit. You should pray, you should exercise, you should eat well, because the days ahead are likely to be very tough days. We need to be physically ready to face what is likely to happen. And our population need to understand that it's a very, I won't say tough period that may happen, that may occur if nothing is done. The reason why we should not even wait until the government tells us you have to do this or you have to do that before we start being very careful. Let's be very careful in order to stop the spread of this enemy. We can do it. We can achieve it. It's achievable.
All right, doctor, how fast does the COVID-19 kill? Is it as fast as Ebola?
It depends on the patient. It is not as fast as Ebola, to be honest. But it can be fast depending on the background condition of the patient. I would also like to emphasize on another point. Taking care of those 2 patients and taking care of those who are currently in the hospital is massively expensive. It is very expensive. As a country, we cannot afford to treat hundreds of patients. Why is it expensive? Not only because of the medicines, the medications that are used, first of all, because of protective measures. Protective for the staff, protective for the patient. Just imagine that for one patient, if he has to receive the visit of the doctor 3 times a day and the nurse 3 times a day, which is the absolute minimum in a critical situation like that, it is 6. You see these dresses, I don't know how you call it in...
The equipment?
Yes, all the equipment. it means you are using at least 6 of those per day, because each time you use it, you have to throw it and incineration. All the linen used, the bed sheets, all the clothes that are used are on a daily basis. It is thrown, destroyed, incinerated.
Not sterilized.
No. The threat is so important that you cannot take that risk. So it costs a lot to take care of one patient. If we know that, we will be, because if the population only understands that, okay, the first 2 cases were healed, they might think, okay, I can get that disease and I'll be cured. But it costs a lot.
Right.
And I don't talk about time spent by the staff there watching 2-3 patients, taking care of 2-3 patients, all the protective measures for the other patients, for the staff. It is a challenge that our country cannot afford at this specific stage. We have to stop it.
Senator Kemende, we have to stop this enemy. We have to stop the COVID-19.
Yes.
What advice do you have for your people
Well,
who you are representing in the upper house of
Mr.
Parliament?
Babilajana, before I go ahead to give my piece of advice, I must first of all regret the situation, some of the circumstances that our populations, various populations in the northwest and the southwest regions are going through. Like the situation of Balikumbat, where the hospital has been taken over by the military, it's become a military barrack. There is no hospital in Balikumbat. So I imagine the situation whereby some victims, some patients happen to be found in Balikumbat. I don't know which medical center will accommodate them, where they can be quarantined. So my plea to the government is that if it warrants that an interministerial committee sits down and decide on how to relocate the military in Balikumbat, that will help the population of a whole subdivision that has only that medical establishment to depend on, where patients could be quarantined and treated or given first aid treatment for transferring them elsewhere. That obtains too with other areas too, where the headquarters, where the hospitals have been affected by the ongoing crisis. Let something be done fast. Let something be done urgently, in order that because one person affected in those areas means the whole country is still at risk, because we still move across. So let the government do something about those hospital, yes, those hospital those environments in the northwest, those hospital establishments in the northwest and southwest that have been affected by the ongoing crisis. Let there be another makeshift hospital, or let there be a relocation where situations like in Balikumbat has arisen, where the military is inhabiting a military hospital establishment.
That the problem should be solved fast, so that
at least there should be normalcy should return. But even in the heart of the crisis, the military themselves, they even they need medical care. If one is affected now, they need to be quarantined somewhere and given first aid treatment before being referred elsewhere. I think those hospitals are a necessity.
And the northwest and southwest are close to neighboring Nigeria, which has recorded one case already.
One case.
And there are questions being raised on the preventive measures at the level of the borders.
In fact, that's
the
why
porous borders between Cameroon and Nigeria.
After expatiating on the Balikumbat unfortunate scenario, permit me now to add my word to what Doctor has just said here. We shouldn't depend on the government to pass down instructions with regard to everything that we have to do to stop the spread of this disease. Let us keep to those rules that has defined here, partly defined here by Doctor, and all other measures that may come up later on. We are very grateful for the social media, because all those measures are propagated on a daily basis. Before they come out, they spread all around all the group. That's one of the greatest advantages of social media. But then we need to select those that are practical, those that are good, are recommended, because the government too uses the social media too. So we should go by those ones that are recommended and jettison those ones that are not recommended, so that we can at least take care of ourselves and let the government do what they can do in the circumstances as Prof here expatiated, whereby they have policy considerations, they have to adjust according to social life and all whatnot, where the government may not want to hurt a good number of the population because of some measures that may inflict hardship. But while the government is considering public policy as far as arriving certain decisions are concerned, let the population personally take care of their personal hygiene, and make sure they stay away from the coronavirus.
The President of the Republic, Paul Biya, in a tweet called on all Cameroonians and all persons on the Cameroonian territory to be more responsible and disciplined at this very crucial period of the country's history, so that together we can fight the common enemy and stop the COVID-19.
This one is more than the Boko Haram and even more than the Amazonian
Professor
crisis.
Elvis Ngole, there are questions that have been raised with regards to government's communication strategy, which some people think that is not the best. We have the Minister of Public Health, who is communicating every day on the number of confirmed cases, giving updates on his Twitter page, but there are other administrations like the Ministry of Communication who are not communicating well on the disease. Some days ago there was just the statement of the President of the Republic on the website of the Ministry of Communication, and all what the Prime Minister has been declaring as measures, the Ministry of Public Health were not on the website of the Ministry of Communication, and there are other issues concerning contradictory information, coordination issues within the administrative mechanism. What should be done at that level?
I think the first thing is that we should all appreciate the fact that the government has taken the front line and is playing a front line role to try to put this, nip this danger in the bud. I think that all of us who are humble, patriotic citizens, we have to see that the government has taken a front line role and is playing a front line role.
And what should be done to correct the flaws?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That in playing that front line role, we all have to feel that something will happen in terms of prevention and reducing the spread. Now you're talking about the coordination among the various administrations of government, which is very, very, very normal. Sure, there might be some flaws here and there which people are free to point out, but that does not take away the fact that
which should be corrected.
Only the government, which should be corrected. That does not take away the fact that that the government has taken the frontline role, is playing the frontline role. The Minister of Public Health is there every day with his collaborators and the experts, and they are doing what the government and the WHO, the government being a member of WHO, expect us to do. At our personal level now, as you said, the President made a tweet. You know, this whole danger that we face, and the measures that have been taken.
Other presidents have come out to speak to the people.
They have done the same thing. They have, on behalf of their states. What we must know is that the government is doing what it has to do and what governments do. But us as individuals or collectively, we also at our personal level have to also do our part in terms of our personal hygiene and so forth and so on. Some of these things, as the doctor was mentioning, are things which every citizen, every human being should do as a matter of personal hygiene. And you should do them because whether there is a public danger or not, you should learn to wash your hands.
Isn't it necessary?
But now that we have it, we should take it. We should know that the danger is there and it can kill you. And we know people have died, and that we should make sure that we follow faithfully the measures the government has put in place and the instructions that have been given by the WHO.
Prof, isn't it necessary for the President of the Republic to address the nation on this issue, like other African presidents and other presidents in Europe and so on?
I think that in Cameroon we always do polemics about everything. I think that the danger is there. The government has recognized the danger. The government has reacted to the danger, beginning with the head of state. And I think no one can say that the state or through the head of state and the government through the Prime Minister have not done anything. Because we know what has been done and we are following it.
All right.
If you really think that addressing it should be the case, feel free to express it that way. But I think the work is being done.
If I may add something.
30 seconds.
This is more than
Senator, 30 seconds.
the state, the governments, and the head of states address to the nation at the end of the year, which is just a mere formality, but never fails. This is a crisis moment. It is now that the #1 person of the country comes out to address an issue. So it is considered that it is of topical importance to the nation. Making an end-of-year address or an address to the youths or the eve of Youth Day, it has become very religious that he does it without fail. What more of a situation where the nation is at crisis? This is equal to the life of a nation under threat. He should come around and address the nation and avoid some of this confusion that arises whereby instructions are received from him for the nation, for the parliament to hold, and instructions are received from him so that 50% should not gather. We should dispel that thing by him addressing the issues.
No,
it's not polemics. I'm talking to my head of state.
Senator, do you acknowledge that the head of state has done something?
No, but he should come and acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it and appreciate it.
Are you comfortable that he remains in the Unity Palace?
You act as if
he
nothing
remains
has
in the
been
Unity
done.
Palace when the nation is burning? He should come out and talk.
Has he done something or has he not done?
We should say call and ask.
We have come to the end of this edition of The Insight. Senator Kemendi, member of Cameroon's Upper House of Parliament, Professor Eugene Sopngui, Professor of Endocrinology and Metabolism at the University of Yaoundé, one and consultant endocrinologist, and of course a fellow of the African Academy of Science. Professor Elvis Ngolengole, political scientist, lecturer of political science and former member of government. Thank you all for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. Goodbye.